Praptasya kalyana gunavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanavindam Samsara Praptasya kalyana gunanavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanavindam Vande Guru Shri Charanavindam Vande Guru Shri Charanavindam Vande Guru Shri Charanavindam Vande Guru Shri
Jaya Sriman Narayana.
Jaya Sriman Narayana.
And everyone together. Jaya Sriman Narayana.
Jaya Sriman Narayana.
Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna.
Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna.
Jaya Shri Guru.
Jaya Shri Guru.
Sanatana Dharma Jayate.
Sanatana Dharma Jayate.
Dharma Rashtra Jayate.
Dharma Rashtra Jayate.
Surya Vangsha Jayate.
Surya Vangsha Jayate.
International Sanatana Dharma Society Jayate.
International Sanatana Dharma Society Jayate.
Om Hri Om. Om Tat Sat. Very good. Wonderful. Well, namaste, everyone. It is, as always, my pleasure to be here with you this Sunday afternoon here in what we call the Vedic Heartland, that is in the Omaha, Nebraska area of America. And before we dive into our talk for today, which is going to be a very good one, a very interesting one, a continuation of what we began last time, first I just want to announce something that we are all extremely happy about. Actually, as people can see on my left here, on what's probably your right, we have published, really reissued, a new edition of a book. The book is called Taking Refuge in Dharma, the ISDS Initiation Guide. And this is what the book looks like, with a brand new beautiful cover. And again, this is a book that we've actually had in print for quite some time, very many years, maybe at least 15, 16 years, maybe more. But this is the new edition. And it is greatly expanded to the point where, I would say it's at least maybe twice as big as the original edition. And when we say big, we mean both as far as the dimensions of it. This is much bigger, but it's many more pages. Indeed, it is close to 250 pages or so, maybe slightly more with the introduction, table of contents, etc. So let's say it's at least 250, 255 pages, something like that. And indeed, it's available now if you go to Amazon and you just look up the name, Taking Refuge in Dharma. And you can even put my name in there as well, Sri Dharma Pravartika Acharya. You will find it rather quickly, actually. And again, what the book is about, I'm not going to talk a lot about the book because at some point in the near future, we're going to have an entire live stream where we talk about the contents of the book very specifically. But in just the briefest nutshell, if an individual is very sincere about practicing Sanatana Dharma, practicing, very important. Again, not just identifying as a follower of Sanatana Dharma, which we've said is actually very important, but if you are interested in seriously practicing it, and specifically under the tutelage of a guru, that is what this book is about. It's about many things, actually. It's about the entire process of how one takes initiation, and really it's also about what is the nature of guru. Indeed, I would say that in this book, in 250 or so pages, I probably speak more about what is the nature of a true guru and of a true disciple, probably more than any other book in print right now by anyone. And more importantly, not just that I speak more about this, but it's the quality of what is written in here. That is scriptural citations, not just opinion. I'm fully aware that there are other books out there. What is a guru? How to find a guru? The guru this, guru that, etc. But sadly, a lot of these books are indeed rife with mental speculation, with ideas that come from multiple different traditions, kind of mix and match sort of idea. This explains what is a guru 100% in accordance with the Vedic scriptures, period. So indeed, if one is interested in knowing such a thing, what is a guru? How do I find a guru? What is the entire process of taking initiation from a guru? What then happens afterwards, etc.? This is a book that you want to purchase right now, as soon as possible. Taking Refuge in Dharma. And again, in the future, we will talk more about this. And I have so many people to thank for the creation of this book. And again, we'll go through some of the contents, but not today, at some point in the future. But indeed, finally, Taking Refuge in Dharma is now available. Very good. And with that, as I always say, everyone, when you have a chance, please spread the link to this video. Please like this video. That helps tremendously with the algorithms. Please subscribe to this channel. Please go to our website, dharmacentral.com, whenever you can. And you'll see that many of our books are indeed available there, and many other important bits of information as well, as far as what is the nature of Sanatana Dharma. Now, with that, again, I said we're going to be doing something quite unique today, and indeed we are. And that is this, that we are talking about understanding the Kali Yuga. What is the nature of the Kali Yuga? And truly, what is the Kali Yuga? You know, this is another one of these terms which, it's not as prevalent as, let's say, karma, dharma, many other words that you find, guru, for that matter, that you find now all throughout the world. The term Kali Yuga, you do find with great prevalence, but again, not quite as much. But sadly, when it comes even to this very important Sanskrita term, and indeed term that arises very specifically, not just from everywhere and anywhere, this is not a term that's owned by the entire universe. No, it is a term that comes from Sanatana Dharma, from the Vedic tradition. When it comes to understanding this term, of course, sadly, there is a lot of modern speculation. And some of it well-meaning, but not based on actual knowledge, a little bit based upon Vedic scriptures, etc. But what we are trying to do with this series of talks that we're doing, we started last week, we'll continue today, and we'll go for maybe a few weeks, is clarifying exactly what is meant by this term, Sanatana Dharma. So that being the case, what we're doing today now is a little bit special. Last week, we covered a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, and very specifically, it was Canto 1, Chapter 1, Verse 10. Now we're going to be doing something special. We're going to read Prabhupada's commentary on that verse, and then I'll be commenting on the commentary. So with that, it's a somewhat long commentary. Bear with me. If you look at the description of this video, you'll see where you also can link to the commentary. You can follow along if you desire. But with that, I am now going to read this wonderful, beautiful, and again, somewhat long commentary by Prabhupada. So with that, we will begin. The devotees of the Lord are always anxious for the spiritual improvement of the general public. When the sages of Naimisharanya analyzed the state of affairs of the people in this age of Kali, they foresaw that men would live short lives. In Kali Yuga, the duration of life is shortened not so much because of insufficiency of food, but because of irregular habits. By keeping regular habits and eating simple food, any man can maintain his health. Overeating, over-sense gratification, over-dependence on another's mercy, and artificial standards of living sap the very vitality of human energy. Therefore, the duration of life is shortened. The people of this age are also very lazy, not only materially, but in the matter of self-realization. The human life is especially meant for self-realization. That is to say, man should come to know what he is, what the world is, and what the supreme truth is. Human life is a means by which the living entity can end all the miseries of the hard struggle for life in material existence, and by which he can return to Godhead, his eternal home. But, due to a bad system of education, men have no desire for self-realization. Even if they come to know about it, they unfortunately become victims of misguided teachers. In this age, men are victims not only of different political creeds and parties, but also of many different types of sense gratificatory diversions, such as cinemas, sports, gambling, clubs, mundane libraries, bad association, smoking, drinking, cheating, pilfering, bickerings, and so on. Their minds are always disturbed and full of anxieties due to so many different engagements. In this age, many unscrupulous men manufacture their own religious faiths, which are not based on any revealed scriptures. And very often, people who are addicted to sense gratification are attracted by such institutions. Consequently, in the name of religion, so many sinful acts are being carried on that the people in general have neither peace of mind nor health of body. The student brahmachari communities are no longer being maintained, and householders do not observe the rules and regulations of the grihastha ashrama. Consequently, the so-called vanaprasthas and sannyasis who come out of such grihastha ashramas are easily deviated from the rigid path. In the Kali Yuga, the whole atmosphere is surcharged by faithlessness. Men are no longer interested in spiritual values. Material sense gratification is now the standard for civilization. For the maintenance of such material civilizations, man has formed complex nations and communities, and there is a constant strain of hot and cold wars between these different groups. It has become very difficult, therefore, to raise the spiritual standard due to the present distorted values of human society. The sages of Naimisharanya are anxious to disentangle all fallen souls, and here they are seeking the remedy from Srila Sutta Goswami. Very nice. Wonderful. Well, let me tell you the background story. Several weeks ago, I was going through the Srimad Bhagavatam with one of my students, and we were reading it, and again, just going through the various verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And what we were doing at the time is, of course, we were using Prabhupada's translation of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and for the most part, we wanted to get through the actual Srimad Bhagavatam as quickly as possible. So what we were doing was we were reading the actual verses, verse after verse after verse, not so much the purports. But it's interesting that when we got to this specific verse, which again is Canto 1, Chapter 1, Verse 10, I had a feeling come over me that, no, we should read this purport. And interestingly, the person I was with had the same feeling and looked at me and I believe said something like, can we read this purport? And I said, yes, let's read it. And indeed, we read this purport. And as soon as we read this, right then and there, I said to myself, and again, this was maybe 3-4 weeks ago, I said to myself, I'm going to do a lecture on this entire purport. And the reason why is because scarcely have we seen in serious literature, what to speak of unserious, even in serious literature, a more apt description of what is the nature of our age. As I was reading that, I hope that people were truly paying attention in a meditative state and thinking about exactly where we are now. Because it's amazing, for people who don't know, the first 3 volumes of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada translated and wrote these purports an extremely long time ago, in the early 1960s. In the early 1960s, when much of the world was still relatively civilized. It was after the mid and late 60s that the world descended into barbarism. But previous to, roughly 1964, 65, the world was still relatively civilized. People had an idea of what civilization meant. That's how long ago Prabhupada wrote this. And yet now in March, beginning of March, mid-March of 2025, as we read this, of course, I'm sure that for anyone who has some intelligence, with almost each line, some vision, some image comes to mind about things that are happening today. So this is indeed the nature of the Kali Yuga, is that it's real. This is not mythology, one of the most worthless words in existence. I wrote an entire paper called Word as Weapon, where this term mythology has been used as quite literally a weapon against religion by fraudulent academicians who are atheists. No, this is not mythology. This is not just, some religious idea and 100 other things that you can call it. No, this is the reality, that we are living in a very specific age that has its own name, not a name given by man, but a name that has been assigned within the context of eternity, because this age repeats itself again and again and again. And that is called the Kali Yuga. This is where we are living now. And indeed, it is the worst of ages. Again, I'm not going to repeat the mini lecture that I gave last time, talking about the nature of time and historicity in accordance with Sanatana Dharma and Vedic science, Vedic scholarship, etc. But let me just say this, that indeed, the idea of qualitative evolution is a demonic lie. Every ancient culture taught the opposite. Devolution, 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 qualitatively, qualitative devolution. And no, the fact that our iPhones seem to get better every several years does not prove qualitative evolution. Number one, it's arguable whether that's even the case, whether iPhones actually do get better. But no, we're talking about qualitative evolution, i.e. ways of being. The evolution versus devolution of ways of being. And what we have seen is that indeed for the last 5,000 years, as far as culture, civilization, spiritual attainment, virtue, etc., things have been devolving, 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 to the point where, indeed, we are now in the very worst of times. We are in the worst of times right now, and let me just say, we've already hit rock bottom for this juncture in the Kali Yuga. 100,000 years from now, it will be worse. But for this juncture, we've hit rock bottom. And now we are beginning a mini ascent. But indeed, what do we find today? Everything that Prabhupada himself expertly says here. Now, again, for the next several weeks, we're going to go through this. So let's begin. First of all, this very first sentence is very important. Again, for people who don't understand the verse that Prabhupada is commenting on, just follow the description. You'll see the link there, plus watch the video from last week. But let's read this. The devotees of the Lord are always anxious for the spiritual improvement of the general public. Yes? Yes. Let me read this one more time. The devotees of the Lord are always anxious for the spiritual improvement of the general public. This alone is beautiful because it says so much. First of all, what's meant by those devotees of the Lord? Just anyone who makes that claim, I'm a devotee of the Lord. Which Lord? Satan. No, no. Not just self-proclaimed devotees. But what is actually meant by this? Actual devotees. We're talking about reality, not man-made artificial reality. We're talking about actual reality. Those devotees of the Lord are known objectively, Sanskritically, as Vaishnavas. A Vaishnava is an individual who is precisely a devotee of God. And what does it mean to be a devotee of God? It means that an individual has devotion toward God. And what in turn does that mean? That means that they have all of the prerequisite attributes of an individual who has such devotion. And what are some of those? A devotee of the Lord having devotion is an individual who has love. Love for God, love for all beings. A devotee of the Lord is an individual who has wisdom. That is, they know why they should be a devotee, and they have all the requisite knowledge necessary such that they can continue to traverse in a positive way upon the path. Such an individual lives their life in simplicity. And again, I've spoken about that many, many times. Does that mean they live in a cave? No. It means that whatever they have, they're satisfied with, and they see all their possessions as being there within their possession in order to serve God better. And I can go on and on and on about these wonderful qualities of the Vaishnava. But one important other quality that the Vaishnava has is compassion. Compassion, compassion. And indeed, again, what does that mean? Compassion, I've spoken about this hundreds of times. Today, compassion is yet another one of those buzzwords that has been destroyed within the context of modernity by 1,000 different opinions, 100,000 different YouTube channels, and websites, and opinions, etc., etc., etc. No, what is meant by compassion is this: that the devotee having suffered him or herself within this world, and now coming to the point where they have found that path, of grace, such that realizing the grace of God, now their suffering can come to an end. And more, that same devotee looking around them and seeing everyone else is still suffering. Oh, how many kinds of suffering are there in this world? When we look at all the individuals, there are so many different people suffering in so many different ways. And thus, this being the case, that the devotee looking upon the world sees all the suffering, they, out of truly the goodness of their heart, want to alleviate such suffering. So that is what is being spoken of here. They are always anxious. And now, how does the devotee specifically want to end suffering? They are anxious for the spiritual improvement of the general public. Understanding that, food is important, shelter is important, clothing, all these things that human beings need are important. But ultimately, to get to the very heart of existential suffering in and of itself, why do beings suffer? It is because we have the illusion of separation from God. This being the case, the way that we can especially help others is via helping them with spiritual improvement. So thus, the devotee, the Vaishnava, is the most blessed of all people. Now let's go on. When the sages of Naimisharanya analyzed the state of affairs of people in this Kali Yuga, they foresaw that men would have short lives. I won't go deeply into this because I did comment on this on the verse last time. Indeed, people today don't live very long. Indeed, it depends on what nation you're in. In some cases, in 2025, if you're in some very poor nations in this world, you're lucky to live to 50. But, let's say in the industrialized modern West, people will live to be 70, 75, 80 years old on average. Tiny number of people will live a little bit longer, etc. But people don't live very long. Indeed, the average age for the Kali Yuga is meant to be 100 years. The Vedic scriptures make this crystal clear. We're meant to live approximately 100 years. Very few people do. So, indeed, this is one of the sad things about the Kali Yuga. Now, let's go on. In the Kali Yuga, the duration of life is shortened not so much because of insufficient food, but of irregular habits. Very nice. Now, we're going to talk about this section here slightly in depth because it's very important. Because what is being said here is that the reason why people don't live as long as they should is because of bad health habits. That basically is what's being said here. So again, let's go through this a little bit. So life is shortened, not so much because of insufficient food. Now let's stop there for just a moment. Yes, it's not that most people literally are starving, or let me put it this way. It's not because starvation is an inevitability. Prabhupada said this many times, that the truth of the matter is, even when you look around the world and you see that, there's some starvation in this country and that country, etc. Remember in the 80s, it was Ethiopia. People talked about Ethiopia all the time. There was mass starvation. Some of us are old enough, we remember that. There was starvation. So it's not that there is not starvation in the world. The point is there's not a reason for starvation. And this is what Prabhupada would point out, that there is more than enough food. The problem is distribution of that food. The problem is individuals having the ability to access that food. Indeed, what do you do when there are nations, i.e. America, where, and some people are aware of this, some people are not. It's not a secret. It certainly is not a conspiracy theory. This is government policy, actually, where for several generations, in order to tinker with the economy, the federal government would sometimes pay farmers to not farm. They would pay farmers to not grow certain crops, and they tended to be the good crops. Corn and soy, yes, grow more. But when it came to actual food, for generations now, in the 50s, in the 60s, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, maybe to this day, government would often pay farmers to not farm, to not grow food. and more, there is an abundance of food in the Western world, but does that food always reach the mouths of the hungry? Very often not. Very often it's wasted. Either wasted by, again, government or by industry itself, by, what is now factory farming, and often the distribution is very bad. So the truth of the matter is people's lives are shortened, but it's not because of lack of food. Rather, what does Prabhupada himself say here? Because of irregular habits. Irregular habits. And really how we can interpret that is not just irregular, but bad habits. That's really what he's saying here, habits that are bad. Now let's go on because he talks about some of these. By keeping regular habits and eating simple food. So here we are. By keeping regular habits, that is doing things in a systematic way every day, not changing every day how you do things, waking up different times, eating different things at different times. When you look at the modern lifestyle, this is precisely what it is. There is no regulation. There used to be. Indeed, talking about farmers, if you were a farmer, you lived your existence by regulation. You woke up at the same time. You had your breakfast. You went and worked. You did this, and you had your schedule all throughout the day. That's not so much the case anymore. So by keeping regular habits, and of course what's meant by that are also good habits, and eating simple food. Now again, what does Prabhupada mean by this? That, you should eat nothing but rice for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? No, that's not what he means. What he means by simple food is real food. What he means by simple food is whole food. Whole food, not processed food. And indeed, for people who would say, well, Prabhupada doesn't seem to be saying that. In other places he does. This is not speculation. In other places he's actually very direct. And he says very specifically, yes, you should eat real foods, whole foods. Not just foods you buy in the supermarket that are prepackaged. But he does say this in many other places. Prabhupada believed in natural food very, very much, and he ate natural food every day of his life. Trust me, Prabhupada never ate a TV dinner or something microwaved ever in his existence. When you see Prabhupada eating, and there are many hundreds of photos, it was food that was prepared in a kitchen from scratch with real vegetables, real grains, real spices, etc., presented to him on a dish, and he would eat it. It was real food. So all that being said, indeed, this is what Prabhupada means by eating simple food, meaning real food. So by doing this, regular habits and real food, eating real food, a man can maintain his health. Indeed, this is one of the cornerstones of Sanatana Dharma. Again, Sanatana Dharma, the eternal natural way, not the eternal artificial way. How horrible would that be? Imagine if someone were to write a book, the eternal artificial way, and try to create a religion out of this. Oh my Lord. Each follower of the religion would live to the age of 10. But it's very interesting. This is what Prabhupada is saying here, is that we have to have regular habits and we have to eat real food, and by doing such, a man can maintain his health. Now, let's go on we'll continue, and now he talks about several other instances of precisely what he's talking about as far as health. He gives several things here. First, overeating. Overeating. This, in addition to stress, is one of the biggest epidemics, health problems in the world today, and again, especially in the industrialized West. Let me just be blunt about this, because people will debate about this. Americans tend to be very, very heavy people. They eat a little too much. Oh no, that's a stereotype. Okay, let me address this once and for all. And this is especially for our people outside of America. Americans are obese. No, not every American, but indeed, compared to a lot of nations, yes, Americans are obese. They overeat. And, I don't want this to be a lecture on health because, A, I'm not an expert to the point where I can talk about all the intricacies of how to have a healthy lifestyle. I know how to have a healthy lifestyle. I don't know every aspect of the science behind it. But let me just say that, yes, overeating and being obese is extremely unhealthy for people. So this is one thing that Prabhupada mentions here. The next thing, over sense gratification, over stimulation of our senses. As each year has gone on throughout the 20th century, now the 21st century, our senses have been increasingly year by year by year bombarded to the point of overstimulation, to the point where when we hear all these things that, they do studies, children's IQ has gone down, children can't focus as much as they could in the past, children are just not as intelligent, they have all these supposed illnesses, ADD, etc., etc. They can't focus on anything. There are many reasons for why that's the case. And again, I don't want this to be a lecture on health. It's also diet. It's also the environment. It's many things. But the greatest of which is overstimulation of the senses. When people hear me go on and on and on about how you need to stop right now, cold turkey, right now, you need to stop playing video games. Not in a year, not in a month, not in a week, not tomorrow. Right now, you need to stop playing video games. This is what I'm talking about. Our senses are bombarded to the point where it destroys our health, starting with the mental health. If your mental health is not doing well, the body will follow suit. And indeed, have you seen this? When you look at quote-unquote gamers, and it's not just video games. Again, it's video games, pornography, all of this fantasy realm that did not exist in the world up until, a few generations ago. When you observe such individuals, not only is their mind disturbed, not only do they have no self-esteem, not only can they not focus, they claim they can, but no, they maybe can focus, concentrate on a video game, take the video game away from them, they're incapable of focusing on anything. It's hard for them to read a book, hard for them to read a comic book. Well, maybe a comic book. But it's hard for them to read a real book, etc. What do you see usually? I know there are exceptions. The exceptions don't matter. Generally speaking, what do you see? Those same individuals who have lost their ability to use their mind in a proper way also are overweight, also are unhealthy, etc., etc., etc. There is a correlation between the two. So indeed, Prabhupada is quite correct here. Over sense gratification. And I translate that as, certainly sense gratification itself, wanting to gratify the senses with food, with, watching crazy movies, etc. But more than anything, it's precisely that. It's an overstimulation of the senses. This is something that's very bad for us. Now let's go on. Overdependence on another's mercy. Now, for some people, this will sound a little odd, like, what does that even mean? And sadly, for some people for whom it will sound odd, it fits them. Actually, that's what's especially sad. What does this mean? Many things, to be overdependent upon another's mercy. In fact, let me back up. Let me explain what is the opposite of this. And that is this, that at a time when we had at least the last whisperings of a little bit of civilization, so again, let's say early 60s, but then extending a little bit beyond that. If you were an adult, what does it mean to be an adult? Today, if I were to say that to a lot of especially younger people, they would think of a 45-year-old. To be an adult means you're 18. If you're an adult, if you were at one point an adult in the past, meaning you were 18, 19, 20, what to speak of older than that, at that point, you were no longer dependent upon anyone. You were no longer dependent upon your parents. This was the case for my parents. Indeed, this was the case for me. Oh my Lord, the moment I reached 18, I was out and doing things. Indeed, I became a monk, actually. I became a monk. I moved into a temple at the age of 16 because legally in New York State, I couldn't do it before then. I started living like a monk at 14, but I was still living with my parents. At the age of 16, legally, I could move into a temple. I did immediately. But from that time on, I was on my own. That is what it was like in the past. That both men and women, men would absolutely get a job at 18, or they would go to college, but they would do something, some hard work. Women also would go to college, get a job, or they would get married, be a stay-at-home mom. But the point is, at that point, they were no longer dependent upon the mercy of others, i.e. their parents, or what to speak of, what else? The state, welfare, etc., etc. No, what it means to be a proper human being is that you are self-sufficient, you are self-dependent. You are independent of others. So, this is what Prabhupada is saying here, is that the idea that you are, pick a crazy age, 30 years old, 25 years old, 35 years old, and you are still dependent upon the mercy of your parents, i.e. you're living with your parents, or let's say you're not, but your parents are paying half your rent, etc., etc. Oh my Lord, go back 50 years even. No, now you don't have to go back to the Dwapara Yuga. Go back 50 years, that was unheard of. It was understood, oh, there must be something wrong with Billy. He's 25, he's still living with his parents. Must be something wrong, there's something weird going on. That was the understanding 50 years ago. Now, it's not anymore. But indeed, this is a curse, actually. Why is it a curse? Because the more self-reliant you are, the more freedom you have. And the more freedom you have, the more you can do. And that means both materially and spiritually. The more of a success you can make of your life. So indeed, overdependence on another's mercy, not good. And artificial standards of living. Artificial standards of living. Indeed, today, and people know this, people have critiqued this endlessly, that people have indeed artificial standards of living today. That is, people truly, truly believe that, oh, to live without a big screen TV, how could I do such a thing? Is that possible? That's an impossibility. And 15 years ago, 20 years ago, people didn't have big screen TVs. You know, I remember the televisions that we had in my family as I was growing up, and of course we had massive big box TVs, etc. No big screen TV. Oh, what? You don't have a smartphone? Oh my God, how are you alive? I had my first smartphone, I believe in 2016 maybe, something like that. I had my first cell phone in 2014. So, and I existed before 2014. I didn't come into being along with my cell phone. I actually existed. I had a life. I had a very good life, actually. In fact, I almost wish I didn't need a cell phone or a smartphone because they're a pain. You know, I'm trying to do something. I'm concentrating, trying to write a book, and suddenly my phone starts dinging. No, it's not only you. Everyone dings my phone. Everybody calls me. But yes, you know, it's very interesting. We have these artificial standards of living where we think that, well, we become spoiled. We think that, well, this is the standard today as of the last 10 years. And if I'm not meeting the standard that everyone else seems to be doing, oh, then there's something wrong with me, and now I have to kill myself to reach that standard, etc., instead of living a life of spiritual simplicity. And again, what's meant by simplicity? Not the stereotype, not, oh, I have to live in a cave, and I have to eat off the floor, and crazy notions like this. No, it means that I should be satisfied. Satisfied, to quote Prabhupada. Simply be satisfied with what I have. Do I need a little bit more? Oh, all right, then get what I need. Could I do with a little bit less? Oh, then let me, edit my life a little bit and get rid of what I don't need. But the point is to live in simplicity rather than artificial standards of living. Now, all these things that I just mentioned, overeating, sense gratification, etc., all of these things sap the very vitality of human energy. This is how this sentence ends. Very, very nicely. Why are these things bad? Because they sap the very vitality of human energy. So indeed, within the Kali Yuga, within the context of this very age in which we're living, and very specifically 2024, 25, this is how we are living. We are living in such ways that our vitality itself is being sapped from us. And people feel this every single day. How many people out there are there for whom this is the case with you? You've heard it from others, that today, you and everyone around you just feel like you have no energy. Oh, it's hard to get out of bed in the morning. I just don't see, I don't know what's wrong today. I think I got good sleep. Maybe I didn't. I don't know, but I just have no energy for some bizarre reason. So that's the thing, this is the reason why. When we have an unnatural lifestyle, then it comes to the point where indeed our vitality itself is sucked away. And what we have is this chronic fatigue syndrome, is this feeling that, I have no vitality, I have no enthusiasm, I have no energy. It's hard for me to become inspired to even do anything today, etc. And thus it becomes a vicious circle. We do all these things that Prabhupada mentions here. We watch the video games and pornography, and we just sit around, we don't exercise, etc., etc. We do all of these things, texting everyone, etc. But we do all these things. This leads to a sapping of our energy. We lack vitality, and then we have no motivation to get out of this vicious cycle. So this is where people find themselves today. But indeed, it's not necessary to be here in any way. Let me just finish this one last sentence, and then we're going to stop there for today. Therefore, the duration of life is shortened. So indeed, if an individual follows an artificial lifestyle, then this is what happens. This is what happens. Is that, of course, we're going to only live to be 72, 75, rather than 100. And then at some point, we'll live to be 50, and at some point, we'll live to be 20. 20 years old at some point in the Kali Yuga will be considered an old man. It's very sad to think, but it's true. But then, of course, what is the nice thing? Conversely, if we choose to not do these things, but to instead do the opposite. So instead of overeating, eat nourishing, nutritious foods and as much as you need. And that's it. Just as much as you need, but you don't go beyond that. Instead of overstimulation of the senses, pratyahara. Pratyahara is one of the angas of the Ashtanga system of yoga. It's one of the limbs of yoga. Pratyahara means the opposite of over-sense gratification, rather giving the senses a rest. Sense fasting. How is this for an idea? I've never mentioned it in these terms, but at some point maybe I'll give an hour-long talk about this. Pratyahara is one of the limbs of the yoga system, of the Ashtanga yoga system, that very few people comment on because they don't know what to make of it. It means withdrawal of the senses. And people will try to speculate and try to make a few things up, but people will comment on the other angas, the other limbs of yoga. Meditation. Yes, I'll talk for 5 days about meditation and make things up. Pranayama, etc., etc. But pratyahara, people don't speak about so much. A few sentences of commentary, that's about it. But this is something that's very important. And this is a way of thinking about it in modern, but also just easy to understand terms. What is meant by withdrawal of the senses, pratyahara? What it means is taking a fast, a sense fast, a fast of the senses. Fasting is of great importance. And when we say fasting, certainly fasting from food, but there are many kinds of fasting. People will take, a fast from caffeine once in a while. People will take a fast from social media. People will take a fast from all electronic devices. They'll say, yes, for the next week, no computer, no phone, nothing, and they'll take a fast. Well, what about the senses? Our senses are always bombarded with stimulation all the time. Well, what pratyahara means is indeed, to state it again very simply, a sense fast, that we decide that for some time, and it can be an hour, it can be, indeed, if you could do this for an hour, you'd see the difference immediately, but it could be for a day, it could be for longer, where you say that I will have nothing overly stimulate my senses. Indeed, I will, of course, what do we do, very specifically as we're doing this? When we're doing meditation, we're doing a sense fast, in a way. But that's meditation. The goal is not to fast the senses. But imagine if we do indeed do this very consciously and purposefully. And we say, no, I'm going to be in the simplicity of my garden. You see, this is the thing. By a sense fast, It doesn't mean, as some people would think, that you literally have to kind of walk around with your eyes closed and you can't touch anything, you can't hear. No, 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 no. What it means is get rid of the overstimulation and rather have the opposite. Oh, you can have your eyes open. You can utilize the senses. You see, that's the word. Utilize the senses, not stimulate the senses artificially, but utilize them in a sattvic way, in a beautiful way. So what does this mean? Oh, you can be in your garden. You can be in your home. And very simply, you simplify the sensory input that comes into you. You know, for how many people is this the case? Oh, I've known people for whom this is the case. They grew up as children in households where the television is blaring 15 hours a day. The family is having dinner. The TV is in the background. Loud voices, loud noises are going on, and people are barely really consciously listening to it, but they are unconsciously. You know, etc., etc. Well, imagine that you say, oh yes, for this whole weekend, television doesn't exist, or any sort of artificial sound does not exist, even music, actually, even if it's, like a CD or anything like that. No, no, no. If there's going to be noise, it's going to be the sound of birds chirping outside. It's going to be the sound of the wind going through the leaves of the trees, etc. So just imagine. Television does not exist. Not only that, but in this sense fast, indeed, you don't bother with electronic devices. You don't even look, what's happening on X? What is so-and-so, my favorite content person? What is he saying now on X? What's happening? What's Elon Musk doing? Oh my God. No. No. You take a fast. And again, for however long, a day. If you could do it a day, that's pretty good. Longer is even better. But in this way, you shut down the senses. So that is pratyahara. This is what we are meant to do. So indeed, in this way, the opposite of all these things. Rather than overdependence on another's mercy, again, make yourself the sort of individual who, in a relaxed, calm way, see, this is the thing, in a calm way, like Nataraja. I've said this many times. You see the image of Nataraja. That is what some people call dancing Shiva. And he is in motion, he is in motion, he is in motion, but his face is serene. In the same way, be the sort of person who you are doing something of value with every breath that you take, but without stress. Not with worry. Not with worry. But understanding that the nature of time is such that once you waste 1 second, you'll never get that second back. That being the case, rather than over-dependence on another's mercy, no, be dependent upon the mercy of God alone, and you express your thanks for that mercy by yourself always doing good things. Good things. Whether it's work itself, that, oh yes, you have your job, but then you're home. Oh, I have to clean this. I have to do the dishes. Oh, now it's time for sadhana. I must sit and read the script. Oh, what? I was able to read the scriptures for 5 minutes. I wanted to read for 20 minutes. Let's say 3-4-year-old child comes in and wants to play. Oh, now you have to shift what you're doing. But you're always doing something positive. In this way, you will not have over-dependence upon the mercy of another. You'll be dependent upon God's mercy alone. And artificial standards of living. Indeed, as I said, live in simplicity. And what will you have? Not that you will have the vitality of your human energy sapped from you, but the opposite. You'll have unlimited vitality. You'll have unlimited energy if you do indeed everything that we just said. So all that being said, we're going to stop here for now. We've commented on the first paragraph of Prabhupada's amazing commentary here on this verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 1, Verse 10. We'll stop here for now, and I would like for just a short time to see if there are any questions from anyone in the audience. And that means, again, either anyone here, or if there's anyone online and you have any questions at this point, please feel free to ask your questions. Very good. Here is an interesting question, and it is, hello Acharyaji, can you please explain the esoteric meaning of the term Godhead? Thank you. Very nice. Well, thank you for that question. And let me just say, first of all, in Sanatana Dharma, there is no division between esoteric and exoteric. In fact, let me comment on that for a short time. And again, I appreciate the question, and I understand why you even ask it in this way. Again, I have studied religion all of my life, both personally and academically, including religious terminology, concepts, etc. And I understand how in the West especially, and even in some quote-unquote Asian religions, for lack of a better term, but less so, there's a little bit of an idea of this division between esoteric and exoteric. Interestingly, within the context of Sanatana Dharma, when speaking about the nature of what is called divine ontology, because that's what you're asking about, is divine ontology, i.e., what is the nature not just of being itself or a specific category of being, but of that highest of all beings, the supreme being, and what is the very nature of that supreme being, and very specifically as designated by this very specific term, Godhead. That's what you're asking. And let me tell you that from the Vedic perspective, when dealing especially with divine ontology, what's meant by divine ontology? Vedanta, very specifically. Vedanta is the school of divine ontology. There is no division between esoteric and exoteric. There is no division. So the answer I'm going to give you is the answer as far as what is the meaning of the term Godhead. First of all, by Godhead, the translation, especially as given by Prabhupada, but really this is the Sanskrit term from which that English term is coming, is Bhagavan. Bhagavan. Bhagavan is Godhead. Indeed, if one were to translate Bhagavan, that would be the correct English equivalent, would be Godhead. What is meant by Godhead, i.e. Bhagavan, is that than which nothing greater can be conceived. So in other words, God, in not just the myriad aspects of God, in not just the lower aspects of God, but indeed that highest aspect of God beyond which there is nothing. There is nothing that is conceivable. So that begs the question, what is meant by the various aspects of God? No, not what a New Age person would say, not just, different opinions of God, etc. No, this is divine ontology. This is all being spoken of from the perspective of God. Man does not exist at this point. Can I state that more bluntly? Man and man's concerns, including man's philosophical concerns, do not exist at this point. We're talking about God from God's perspective, i.e., what God is sui generis, in and of, let's keep this philosophical, itself. This being the case, what we are talking about is indeed God in the very highest. What is that? Something that ultimately the grandeur of which is truly inconceivable. The fact that it is inconceivable can be conceived. And indeed, even many of the attributes, again, the grandeur of which are inconceivable, the attributes themselves can be conceived, even in human language and human conceptual form. This is what we're talking about when we speak of Godhead. Now, interestingly, how Prabhupada translates this term, Bhagavan, he uses Godhead, but he also uses a greater term to make it even more clear exactly what I'm speaking of, and that is when he is translating Bhagavan in any of his writings, including throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam. Let me ask my students, how does he translate this?
Supreme personality of Godhead.
Very nice. This is why my students are my students. They're wonderful. The supreme personality of Godhead. So this makes it even more clear. And truthfully, that term in and of itself also is inherent in the very Sanskrit term Bhagavan. Because by definition, Bhagavan is a personality, not just a personality, but in accordance with, interestingly, also Patanjali, who also says the same thing, that who is Ishvara? Ishvara is an Atman that is distinct from all other Atmans and superior thereof. Prabhupada says the same thing, the Upanishads say the same thing, the Srimad Bhagavatam says the same thing, Krishna himself says the same thing in Bhagavad Gita, where he says directly to Arjuna, "Oh no, Arjuna," and I'm paraphrasing, of course, but this everyone knows this this section in the Bhagavad Gita. "Oh no, Arjuna, I know you don't remember your past lives. I remember mine. We're not the same. We're not the same. We're not the same." So thus, indeed, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is the understanding, and I can go deeper, actually, as you can imagine, but this is the briefest summary of what is meant by this term Godhead, i.e. Bhagavan, in the Sanskrit language. And again, we can go deeper, but let me stop there for now, because we do have other questions. But I hope that answers. So let me just say again in summary, that being the answer, it's neither esoteric nor exoteric. It is the answer. That would be either the textbook definition or what the greatest, most advanced, most enlightened, most liberated yogi on the face of the earth also would deliver unto you. That's the definition of Godhead. Very good. So give me a few moments. I see many more questions here. And in the meantime, does anyone here have any questions? Please.
I was wondering, so there was always a need to have warriors, and so there was always wars in every yuga, right? And there were always some evil beings that had to be defended against, and usually there were people fighting over land, right? In every yuga, or when did that get worse? Or
So when did wars begin, essentially?
yeah,
And why?
yeah, or did they always exist?
Wars have always existed, other than the very absolute beginning of our time. There was a time when there was no war. Indeed, the idea of a conflictual activity, what we would call war, began soon after the Devas and the Asuras turned against each other. At one time there was no war, including within the material world that is on this planet. In the Satya Yuga, there was no war at the very beginning. For that matter, in the Satya Yuga, what is truly the golden age per se, not just a golden age, but the golden age, which was millions of years ago, there was no war, there was no varna, people lived for an extremely long period of time, there was no ill health, etc. But toward the mid to the end of the Satya Yuga, then these things began. Cosmically speaking, there was a time when indeed there was no war within the cosmos. But then what happened was you had two sets of divinities. You had the Devas and the Asuras. And the Asuras became more and more ego-driven, materialistic, to the point where now they became opposed to the Devas, who remained unmaterialistic, non-egoic, etc. And then there began to be war within the cosmos itself. But again, at the very beginning, both of our planet, but also of the cosmos itself, at one time there was a state without war. But then it began. Now, as far as why wars occur, that's more of a psychological question than anything. Why do people engage in wars? Why do people seek to possess that which they have no right to possess to begin with? Egotism. It's egotism. It's the idea of greed, which is something that is an outgrowth of egotism, possessiveness, which is an outgrowth of egotism, etc. What is egotism itself? It is the idea that first, egotism is having an artificial sense of self. Rather than knowing who we truly are in our completeness as Atman, we have the mistaken idea that we have lack. When a person develops ahankara, false ego, the first thing that they think is, I have lack, therefore I have to seek to remedy that lack that lack that I have within me. When you are a spiritual person, you have no sense of lack. You're in complete satisfaction. But when you're even the beginning seeds of egotism, you now have a sense of lack. Why? Because you're doing something artificial. You're doing something that should not be. That being the case, it's something that's unnatural to you. So you think you have lack. When you have a feeling that you have lack, then you have to possess. When you don't possess enough of your own, and you're too lazy or untalented to gather more and more unto you, what do? You steal. How do you steal? By any means necessary. If you have tremendous power, then you steal via war. If you have armies at your disposal, great wealth at your disposal, etc., but your wealth is, in your mind, not enough for you, you go to war. And you try to take, yes, like you said, other people's lands, other people's possessions. You try to loot other countries, etc., etc. So this is how war begins. But indeed, there was a time in which among collectivities of living beings, there was no war. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Very good. Very nice. Very good. Please give me a moment to look at the rest of these questions. And I'm not going to answer too many more questions, sadly, only because of, again, lack of time. I don't want to keep people for too long. And we will take questions next week as well. Very good. Very nice. Here's a very nice, interesting question, actually, and it is, Namaste, dearest Acharyaji. I heard that someone can only become a guru or acharya by their guru. Who was Siddhartha Gautama's guru, or was his case extraordinary or exceptional? Very good question. First of all, that is indeed quite true. An individual, first and foremost, cannot become a guru unless they have a guru. This is something that there is no way around. This is something that is foundational. A person can't claim, oh yes, I have no teacher myself, but now I'm a teacher. That is an impossibility. The totality of the Vedic scriptures rail against this idea. Either that you can become your own guru, or you don't need a guru. No, every person who is a legitimate guru had a guru. Now, whether historically the name and activities of that guru is known or not, well, that's a different question. There certainly are individuals for whom, let's say they lived 2,000, 3,000 years ago, or they're written about in the Vedic scriptures. We may know that they have a guru, but we don't necessarily even know the person's name or anything like that. This is the nature of literature and of history. So we may not know the name of the person. As far as Gautama Siddhartha, we can know by logical inference that, of course, he had to have a guru because he was a yogi. Before he became the enlightened Buddha, we know that he lived in the forests in the midst of other yogis, ascetics, etc., that they all had gurus. So he must have had a guru. He lived literally with other ascetics. So it cannot be the case that he was just kind of doing this on their own. They all had their guru. He must have had a guru as well. As far as whether we know the name of such individual or individuals, because you can have more than one guru as well. Honestly, I don't remember. I've read an enormous amount on Buddhism, including translations of much of the Pali literature, and I just cannot remember offhand if we know the name of a specific guru who was the guru of Gautama. I just don't remember that. But again, the logical inference is that he had to have had a guru, because everyone did back then. There was no such thing as do-it-yourself gurudom. That's a New Age idea that arose in not just the West, America in the last several generations. This didn't exist in Vedic times. So I hope that answers the question. Very good. Very good. And with that, I'm going to stop taking questions for now. I'm just going to read this one very nice comment here, and it's Namaste, Sri Acharyaji. I just received the expanded edition of Taking Refuge in Dharma in the mail. Very nice. Wonderful. I'm very happy that that's the case. Very good. So with that, again, we're going to stop here just for now, but we are going to continue with this going on into the future. Very nice. Good. again, I won't read the person's name, but someone here who we all know. He's one of my students, and he's someone who, let me just say, he's working, I believe, on his master's degree in religious studies. I might be wrong about that, might be bachelor's degree. But he knows Buddhism extremely well. And he says the Buddha's direct guru is unknown, but he had many teachers during his time as a forest ascetic. Indeed, that's the impression that I had as well. I don't know of a name of his direct guru, but he had many gurus when he was living as an ascetic. So that's very, very true. Very good. So with that, again, we're going to stop here. Just a few reminders. Again, the new book is out, Taking Refuge in Dharma. And this is my first time seeing it. Indeed, it entered my hands maybe 15 minutes before the live stream began, something like that. So I took a very quick look through it, and it looks absolutely beautiful. It is the much expanded edition of, again, a book that we've already had out by the same name, but the cover is different. It's at least twice the size, maybe more. It's very, very big now. It's a quite big book. So when you have a chance, especially now that the live stream is going to be over, please feel free to go to Amazon. Just look it up and you'll find it. It's available both on Kindle and in print as well. Indeed, we have it in softcover. In the future, many of our bigger books are also going to be in hardcover. That's something we're working on as well. And this book especially, given the beauty of the cover, this would look absolutely beautiful in a hardcover edition. So we're working on that. We'll try to do that as soon as possible. But indeed, please get this book when you have a chance if you want to know much more about how to practice Sanatana Dharma today. Also, when you have a chance, please join our Discord server. I always mention this. We have a beautiful online community of hundreds of ISDS devotees. The link, I'm sure, is there somewhere in the chat. Please feel free to join that, and you can engage in ongoing discussions with people via chat, via group discussions that take place literally 24/7, because we have devotees of the International Sanatana Dharma Society in about 70 nations throughout the world. And we're not going to expand much more than that by design, actually. I know there are close to 200 nations in the world. We're happy with those 70 nations. We might expand a little bit more, maybe 80, 85 at the most in the future, something like that. But we're not going to go beyond that, and that's by design. So you're never going to hear me say, we're in 200 nations. That's not going to happen. We don't want that to happen, actually. So that's as it is. We have devotees in about 70 nations throughout the world. But again, you can meet many of them for yourself if you go to our Discord server. Also, please visit dharmacentral.com. That is our main website. And all of our books are available on there for sale. You'll see we have a beautiful mantra meditation album that is on there as well, where it's myself reciting a wide variety of mantras with truly beautiful, professionally produced music in the background. One of my students he's retired now, but he was a serious music producer. I won't say what nation he's in. It's not America. And he produced this beautiful album for us. It's simply called Mantra Meditations, but that's available. Also, there's information about how to become a member of the International Sanatana Dharma Society if you visit, indeed, dharmacentral.com, as well as how you can donate. We have an ever-growing movement with many, 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 many projects that we're working on in order to restore Dharma to this world. And that being the case, we need your donations. If you can donate $5, $5 million, or anywhere in between, that would be very, very greatly appreciated. So with that, again, we're going to stop here. Please join us next week as we continue with this beautiful purport by Prabhupada on the nature of the Kali Yuga. And with that, everyone, namaste. And everyone together, babies and children included, so that the gods can hear us above. Jaya Shriman Narayana.
Jaya Shriman Narayana.
Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna.
Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna.
Jaya Shri Guru.
Jaya Shri Guru.
Sanatana Dharma Jayate.
Sanatana Dharma Jayate.
Dharma Rashtra Jayate.
Dharma Rashtra Jayate.
Surya Vangsha Jayate.
Surya Vangsha Jayate.
International Sanatana Dharma Society Jayate.
International Sanatana Dharma Society Jayate.
Victory to Sanatana Dharma now and forevermore. Evam Bhavatu. May such victory be so. And such victory shall be so. And with that, everyone, I ask you between now and the next time that we get together to please in every way take very, very good care of yourselves. And to always keep this in mind, that regardless of anything that is happening today in the news, in your life, whatever crazy things we will continue to see happening, please understand that things ultimately are going to be good. Good, good. And I want to leave you, lastly, with these sacred words from Bhagavan Sri Krishna, from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, verse 66, wherein he says, Ma Shuchaha. Do not fear. Do not fear. Do not fear. For God is with us always, and God wins in the end.